The Dao De Jing, verse 53. In the ancient text the Dao De Jing by Lao Tzu, each verse provides timeless wisdom on how to bring peace and greater clarity into our daily lives. In this video series we will look at each chapter in sequence. First, let's listen to the verse as beautifully translated by Stephen Mitchell, and then we'll look more deeply into its meaning. By the end, we'll reflect on how its teaching can help us stay grounded and centered, even in a chaotic world. The great way is easy, yet people prefer the side paths. Be aware when things are out of balance. Stay centered within the Tao. When rich speculators prosper while farmers lose their land. When government officials spend money on weapons instead of cures. When the upper class is extravagant and irresponsible while the poor have nowhere to turn. All this is robbery and chaos. It is not in keeping with the Tao. Here's a breakdown of the ideas. The way is simple, we complicate it. The great way is easy, yet people prefer the side paths. The Tao, the natural way of things, is fundamentally simple. It doesn't rely on force, effort, or manipulation. It moves like water, quietly finding its course, without strain, simply being what it already is. But we often struggle with that simplicity. Instead of allowing life to unfold, we try to control it. We choose complexity over clarity, and ambition over balance. We assume that if something is harder, it must be better. And so we drift into what Lao Tzu calls side paths. These are the detours we create through overthinking, overplanning, and ego-driven striving. They promise more control, but often deliver less peace. We end up working harder, but feeling further away from serenity. Returning to balance. Be aware when things are out of balance. Stay centered within the Tao. This is the corrective principle. The Tao is not something we impose on life. It is something we learn to notice and align with. It is already here, quiet, steady, and present in the natural order of things, if we are willing to pay attention. When we are out of balance, it becomes visible, through the effects it creates. In our own lives, imbalance may feel like stress, exhaustion, or constant pressure, as if we are pushing too hard in one direction, or neglecting something essential. In the wider world, imbalance reveals itself through disorder, excess, and the widening distance between those who have much and those left behind. These are not the Tao expressing itself, but signs that we have drifted away from it. To stay centered within the Tao means not being pulled into extremes. Not reacting to imbalance with more imbalance. Instead, it is about remaining steady, grounded, observant. Rather than being swept into chaos, or overcorrecting in the opposite direction, we hold a quiet inner stability. And from that place, things tend to settle on their own. When value gets distorted. Lao Tzu gives us examples of what imbalance looks like in society. When rich speculators prosper while farmers lose their land. This points to a world where what is essential is no longer what is valued. Speculation and abstract profit are rewarded, while the real work of sustaining life is pushed aside. Farmers represent what is tangible and necessary. The people who produce food, the foundation of survival. Speculators represent distance from that reality, wealth generated through abstraction. When reward shifts away from what actually maintains life, imbalance begins to form. On the surface, things may still look successful. But underneath, the foundation is weakening. Because a system cannot remain stable when it forgets what sustains it. When fear replaces care. When government officials spend money on weapons instead of cures. This reflects another form of imbalance. Resources are directed toward harm, defense, and fear, rather than healing and well-being. It is a shift in priorities, from care to control. From supporting life, to preparing for threat. At a deeper level, it shows what happens when fear begins to guide decisions. Instead of investing in what helps life flourish, energy is spent managing what might go wrong. In Taoist terms, This is moving against life rather than with it. Away from restoration, and toward tension. And over time, that direction always comes at a cost. When extremes divide society. When the upper class is extravagant and irresponsible while the poor have nowhere to turn. Here we see imbalance at a social level. Excess at the top. Struggle at the bottom. There is a widening gap between comfort and need. From a Taoist perspective, this is not a stable arrangement, even if it appears functional for a time. Because harmony depends on flow, not separation. When resources accumulate in one place and dry up in another, the system begins to strain. What looks like prosperity in one area is mirrored by pressure in another. And over time, that pressure builds. Not because anyone is being punished, but because imbalance cannot be sustained by society indefinitely. The outcome of imbalance. All this is robbery and chaos. It is not in keeping with the Tao. This is the conclusion. Robbery here doesn't just mean theft in a literal sense. It means taking more than is needed. Extracting from the whole without regard for balance or return. And when that happens at scale, chaos follows. Because imbalance does not stay contained. It spreads. Small distortions grow into larger instability. What begins as misalignment becomes disruption. From a Taoist view, this is not moral judgment. It is cause and effect. When we move away from balance, disorder is not random, it is what naturally emerges. What chapter 53 is really saying? The Tao is simple, but people complicate it. We drift away from balance through overthinking, excess, and control. And in doing so, we lose touch with what is natural and sustaining. In society, this shows up as distorted priorities. What is essential is neglected. What is unnecessary is elevated. And the result is separation, instability, and tension. Not as punishment, but as the natural consequence of leaving the way. Applying these ideas in everyday life. So what does this look like in practice? First, choose simplicity where you can. When faced with decisions, avoid endlessly optimizing for the perfect option. Set a limit. Choose clearly. Move forward. Simplicity is often more stable than perfection. Second, build moments of awareness into your day. Pause between tasks. Notice your state. Are you rushed? Tense? Scattered? Sometimes a small reset is enough to restore balance. And if you're emotionally triggered, don't react immediately. Step away. Breathe. Return when you're grounded. Focus on what is real and sustaining. Put energy into things that actually support your life, not just fill your time. Ask yourself regularly, does this matter, or is it just noise? Invest in foundations, your health, your skills, your relationships. Things that continue to support you over time. Direct your energy toward healing, rather than escalation. In conflict, aim to understand rather than win. Listen before reacting. And in your own life, prioritize recovery just as much as effort. Rest is not a reward. It is part of balance. Practice moderation. Notice where excess creeps in, whether in spending, consumption, or distraction. And gently bring things back to enough. At the same time, support balance in others where you can. Even small acts of help contribute to stability. And finally, notice imbalance early. Don't wait until things break down. If your schedule becomes too heavy, simplify it now. If something feels off financially, emotionally, or relationally, address it early with a small adjustment. Balance is easier to restore when you catch it early. Can you think of any more practical applications of Lao Tzu's ideas? Comment below. If you've enjoyed the series so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. The takeaway message. If there is one message from this chapter, it is this. When we move away from simplicity and balance, life naturally becomes more chaotic. This quote reminds us that life tends to work best when it is grounded in simplicity and balance. When we move too far into excess, control, ambition, or complexity, we gradually lose our sense of harmony, both within ourselves and in the world around us. The resulting stress, conflict, or instability is not punishment. It is simply the natural consequence of drifting away from what is steady, essential, and life-giving. Chapter 53 encourages us to notice when we have wandered, and gently returns us to the simple path. For the way is never truly lost, it waits quietly for us to come home to it. Thanks for watching.